me to get up basically. But recently my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, said that she needed to reset her habits. She was getting up late and stuff, and honestly she came up with this herself. The idea of resetting, she said, she called it restarting, like she was a computer that needed a restart. And I said, hey, that's very wise, how are you going to do it? And I told her it, and she said, I don't know how I'm going to get up on time. And I said, well, the way I do it, I also struggle with getting up on time. And the way I do it is this app. And so she said, can I do it too? So yep, on my phone I've just got another alarm, and when that second alarm goes off at 7:35, hold on buddy, I'm just talking to my best friends who I've never met. When the second alarm goes off, I just bring it upstairs to her room, and then she has to get up, and then she keeps her clothes downstairs, so she has to get her clothes on. Yeah. I've been pretending for a long time that digital to-do lists are more convenient because it's all in one place, but I've finally conceded to the idea that I think paper to-do lists are better. So I got myself this moleskin little notebook, pen tucked in there, put it in my back pocket, and it means, for some reason, when there's a stoplight, like yesterday there was a red and we stopped in the car, and I was able to get out my moleskin just on the passenger side, quickly write something down before green, and it was too difficult for me to go into the app. You know, we're listening to Spotify, go out of maps, go into the app. It just is too distracting for some reason. So it's been working better. Here's what I've got into my to-do list. School schedule. I've kind of figured out what we're doing on each day. The different kids are doing more separate activities than we used to. We used to do everything together. Now I'm doing more reading with the boys. I'm doing kind of word lessons, speaking lessons with the young boys, 3-year-old and 5-year-old. They have some trouble with forming words and pronouncing the and stuff like that, so I'm doing that with them. Daughter doesn't need it. Daughter's doing copy work and stuff like that the boys don't really do. But then there's some lessons that we do all together. That would be sewing, that would be writing letters. Yesterday I was helping them structure their letters of encouragement to their friends. And what's another one? Microscope, nature journal type stuff. So I've split the 5 days into those 5 main lessons. So to clarify the structure at the moment, we start off by doing the to-do list. That includes chores and my daughter's history, maths, that sort of thing. She does that on her own. We'll do a separate stuff. Then we go out for a walk, usually in nature, in a woods or something. Then it's the lesson that we all do together, whether that's sewing or microscope. Then it's the morning basket, and that's sitting on these sofas having a cuddle and reading. Well, at the moment it's James Herriot. Let me get it. Really interesting discussion about how there's this new science coming in about these are useless, these are harmful, and this old man has got these shelves and shelves and shelves of these ornately inscribed old veterinary instruments, and like this gag thing that you put it in the horse's mouth, and then this gun that kind of shoots in the medicine, or this instrument that you put into a cow with mastitis and stuff like that, and this particular medicine that has purple smoke that comes out, and he says, what does that do? And he says, I'm not really sure, but but it looks cool. Anyway, it's very charming and really interesting. And then we're doing our Advent reading as well, which is Jotham's Journey. And this is quite intense. I would say probably over 8-year-olds. Quite scary for under 8s, but it's very, very good. I get really frustrated with the sappiness and what do you call it, airy-fairiness of a lot of Advent stuff. But this is really down to earth, really biblical, and really excites your imagination about what it must have been like in Second Temple Judaism in the period just before Jesus' birth. The debates were happening, for example, with the scribes and the Pharisees and the rabbis who were debating about whether Jesus was going to be a king who was going to kill the Romans, or whether he was going to be, you know, a little baby in Bethlehem that a lamb led to the slaughter. So it's really good. Recommend. Most people bring snacks, we carb load before we go. I'll go first. So I notice that the little frozen bits are, that it's not just like a frozen blanket over the top, it's frozen on each individual hair. I wonder why the freezing water doesn't just fall off it before it freezes. And it reminds me a bit of a snowflake. Your turn?
With my arm.
I'm sorry for banishing you for whining. I felt annoyed because she was trying to do her Wonder Remind, and she couldn't hear it. My suggestion is next time you could whisper what you're wanting rather than the whining. Okay? That is amazing. I noticed that the ice hasn't made it so heavy that it cracks. I wonder why it's shaped like that, in little zigzags. And it reminds me of... Well, what does it remind me of?
It reminds you of...
Sounds like it's raining, but it's just the ice from the morning falling. Is he scratching his beard?
Or he's saying no.
No, 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 no! So we just did our Exploring Nature with Children passage. It was about birds and how they insulate and stuff like that in the winter. So we went out and saw some feathers and asked lots of questions, and now we're back home. We're gonna have some lunch and I'll read to them while they're having their lunch. And today is, I'm just looking at our calendar, today is, Nature Journal did that, art history. So we're reading about art.
It's a rich image. At the end of chapter 2, they're naked. You're different than me, I'm different than you, but there's no shame.
I never thought about it that way. Okay, there's...
Look at the back.
We're going to do chapter 3. The cracked windscreen with his sleeve. Over the broken stone pass and down Slidale. The well in front. What do you think about making noise while I'm doing it? The logs that got chopped down from the trees in our next door neighbour's garden has been given to us. And we have been playing with it and things, and we stripped some of the bark and we realised that under this fir's first layer of bark there's this kind of silvery, slippery, see if this is an example. Yeah, this is still wet. Because just under the bark surface, right here, oh, it's very strange texture. This is where all of the moisture runs up the tree, just under the surface here. So, I'm listening to a podcast. By the way, I had to learn sumo deadlift because my feet in the normal position would just go straight through the floor because the ground isn't very steady and it has like beams underneath, so I have to put my beams and my feet and on top of the beams, which is like a really wide stance, so I had to learn how to do it like that. And it's 0 degrees right now, so hashtag no excuses. I'm listening to a podcast called The Rest is History. Really good. It's by a historian called someone, and another historian called someone else. And Tom Holland is one of them, who did Dominion, which you may know, History of the Christian Empire, I think he called it. And they were drawing parallels between the Reformation and cancel culture, the Reformation and Twitter, and the culture on Twitter. There's a culture war in both cases. With Twitter, there's a culture war between the sort of established old structures of morality and the new upstarts, kind of progressive types, trying to make a change, trying to protest, the Protestants you could call them, and having sort of angry digs at the kind of moral authorities, previously thought of as moral authorities. And it's all leveraging a new technology, which is Twitter, or the internet, which allows many thousands of people to hear and see these protests, to amplify these protests of the tiny minority, or at least you would think it's a tiny minority, but it's actually tapping into a groundswell of change. And it's the same with the Reformation. You know, there was lots of people starting to feel that the Pope is doing something wrong, or that there's something deeply broken, and there are these big fracture lines. And then this coincided with a very loud, angry protester, progressive, Luther, Calvin, who were very, very snappy, very incisive, very articulate, very loud, and tapped into this new technology, which would be the printing press. Anyway, I'm stealing from the podcast. You should go and check it out. The kids are in bed. I feel hazy and lazy and confused. I feel guilty about something that I don't know what about. I miss friends, but I don't know who in particular. I'm homesick for a home that I don't think I've ever been to. I long for Christmas time, but I know when I get there I'll be deeply hesitant about the very idea of it. And I'm mourning for a scattered family. My family, my direct family, has been destroyed and scattered. But this virus has destroyed and scattered the family of God. And so there's just this really, that mist I saw this morning is in more than one level. When you're a baby, you're in your carry cot thing, and your mum picks you up and the baby's asleep, but your mother's picking you up, she's caring for you. And I'm gonna go to sleep and it's like the whole earth is my bed. The sun will rise no matter how I feel, whether I'm crying or not, you know. The Mother, the Father in heaven, His mercies, His generosity. I will be crying at Him for whatever little earthly thing, but He knows. And He has curated my environment such that I'm gonna be alright. He knows that. But it doesn't disperse exactly this mist, this darkness. It just pushes on from behind, like the sun behind the